All right,
Okay.
go for it.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christy Kotek, and I am in the Alumni Relations Office at Roosevelt University. As I also shared, I am an alum as well from the Masters in Training and Development Program, proud RMU alum and employee. And Joe, our presenter this afternoon, is also an alum from the same program. So we're very excited to have him here. Just a quick few things to make sure that this presentation goes smoothly and that everybody can participate. Just please, we ask that everyone kindly just keep their mic muted throughout the presentation just to avoid any background noise or disruption. I know we're all very much, Zoom almost experts at this point, but just wanted to share that quick reminder. And then you can also use the chat box feature for questions throughout this next hour. Joe will be, be addressing questions throughout, and then we'll save some time at the end, of course, for any additional questions that you might have or anything that we missed. But we'll try to address them as we go through the hour. And again, thank you so much for joining. We're very excited to have you here. It's great to have so many from our community join us. This is, for me, I think a really important topic. I've been an avid LinkedIn user and advocate for many years, and I know the value that it's brought to my life. So I'm so excited that Joe has really graciously accepted to join us this afternoon and share his insights and expertise regarding LinkedIn. So as I share, Joe's a Roosevelt alum, a recent graduate from the Masters of Training and Development program. He has a background in training development with a focus on educational technology, adult learning theory, and creative software. He is currently a customer customer success manager at LinkedIn. One thing I also recently learned about Joe is that he joined the social impact team on LinkedIn. So he's really doing some great work all around at LinkedIn. And I think you will certainly see over the next hour Joe's just passion, not only for LinkedIn, but also in just helping to inspire and educate others. So Joe, thank you again so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you.
Oh, well, thank you for a great introduction, Christy. Thank you, everybody on the call today, on the webinar, for giving me your time. I want to encourage everybody here to network together. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but these are this is your network here, and these are going to be the people that you bounce ideas off of, that you grow with. Advancing your career has a lot to do with sharpening your skills and just finding what you're passionate about with other people and continuing to practice and grow. So definitely use that this part of your day to get to know other people if you can. Feel free to share links to your LinkedIn profile here. You can also go on LinkedIn and look up alumni. I'll show you how to do that. I want to share some resources with you, or let you know what resources you'll have available to you after the presentation. That way, as I go through content, you don't have to worry about retaining everything, because there are going to be some resources for you as well. So I'm going to show you the resources that I'm going to share with you. Created a link that Christy will give to everybody who signed up. This link is going to contain resources. One, I'm going to encourage everybody to also be a mentor to other people who are trying to advance their career. A common theme of today is that in being a mentor, giving informational interviews to other people, you're also going to sharpen your skills, your elevator speech, if you will. So giving back also really helps you. There's a symbiotic relationship there. I'm going to give you the entire deck from today's presentation, so you'll have that. Depending on some of the questions that we have and the dialogue that we have, we may not cover every single slide here. So rest assured that these resources are going to be available for you. I've got some resources that you can print off. And if you're like me, sometimes it's nice to just print things off, take a pen, and start crossing things off on a paper. And this is something that you can print off here. So this resource is available for you. And last, I have a little deck that I created on building your brand. This is something that you can print off. Again, more resources. There's also a really great article that I'm going to talk about in the presentation that you can check out here. So lots of resources for you. And before I jump in, LinkedIn is just like any other. It's like a lot of things out there where you can't just try to eat the elephant in one day. Don't expect to create your LinkedIn profile in one day or even in 1 week. It's a work in progress. Maybe set aside 20 to 30 minutes where you work on your LinkedIn profile, check out other people's profiles. Informational interviews are great where you can get a hold of somebody, call them and talk, maybe meet with them in person, have coffee when that's going to be an option again. But LinkedIn lets you do this stuff where you can just search for profiles, look people's profiles up and learn about their journey. And others can learn from your journey as well on LinkedIn. So this is an ongoing process. Don't feel the pressure to have to get this right on the first try. So as we jump into our job seeker session here today and how to build your network and advance your career on LinkedIn, I wanted to level set with you on the mission and vision of LinkedIn. At LinkedIn, our mission is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. Our vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. Now that's a big vision, but it's our North Star. And when you're on LinkedIn, you can just imagine that you can also create economic opportunity for other people. You can help create that for yourself by connecting and building your network. So I'll show you how to begin this journey. We've got an overview of what LinkedIn is. We're going to show you how to build your profile, build your professional network, so grow that network. We'll look at how to connect and give you some strategies for connecting with others on LinkedIn. And then we'll show you how to search and apply for jobs. And I got a little bit of extra credit that you may want to follow the resources if we don't get to that spot. But there'll be a little extra for those who are ready to go above and beyond. Oops. So when we think about LinkedIn, I'll just cover this briefly. There's a lot of social networks out there, and it's important to get an idea of what you can do on LinkedIn and what it is and what it isn't. When you think of social media, Facebook is where you can post, hey, I like donuts. Another one would be Snapchat, where it's like, hey, you can watch me eat the donut. Instagram is kind of a place where you can say, look, here's a cool photo of one. Pinterest might show the entire recipe. Spotify, you're listening to donuts. And then WhatsApp would be, does anyone want a donut? Where you're having this conversation together. So pardon the analogy to donuts, but just something to kind of give you an idea. These are what other social networks do. On LinkedIn, you would be using that more for, look, this is a career goal. I want to one day own my own franchise. I'm looking for a job in a certain area. You want to be able to display your experience, show your top skills, and then even show recommendations that you can get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place to host others, other recommendations that you get from colleagues or people that you've worked with even in school. On your LinkedIn. So this is really just a professional mindset. And I think that really helps a lot of people to know that this is a place where I can be professional and I'm not going to get some of the other social network aspects that might be noise when you're trying to really grow professionally. So when we talk about building your professional network and connecting to jobs, this is a great place for it. We've got 50 million plus employers on LinkedIn, and there's a million with millions of open opportunities for jobs. There's 690 million professionals in over 200 countries on LinkedIn. We have 2.9 million groups on LinkedIn. These are groups where people go to focus and talk about their professional interests. So LinkedIn is a great spot for you to learn and grow and help others as well. 9 out of 10 employers are using LinkedIn during the hiring process. They may go to take a peek at your profile. They may go to learn more about what top skills they can expect to see from other profiles. But it's 9 out of 10 are using LinkedIn during the hiring process. And by the way, I did see a couple post their link to their LinkedIn on the chat. So awesome. Thanks for doing that. And there's some key terms that we'll use today. I actually don't think any of these, I don't think I really need to read any of these. I was actually going to pull that slide out. Sorry about that. I won't go over anything that we don't need to. Time is precious. Feel free to ask questions, by the way, as we continue, and I will be sure to check in on the chat pod. So when we look at building your LinkedIn profile, I'm going to go through 4 main steps here. First, you got to have an account. So if you don't have an account, they're really easy to build. Over the years, LinkedIn has optimized this process, so it really does guide you and help you. I've had some of the steps and the prompts through this process help me create. So it's really a user-friendly interface. You can download the app on the App Store, the Apple App Store or the Android App Store, or you can just do it from a desktop. You pick whatever's easier for you. A common question that I get is, what's the difference between a LinkedIn profile and a resume? So the difference between the two is when you look at your profile is going to be looked at by every potential employer out there. Your profile is also going to be looked at by colleagues. It's also going to be looked at by potential mentees. This is a great way for other people to learn and kind of get like this digital informational interview from you. So one thing that I started to recognize that with my LinkedIn profile was that I was telling this story. It was me building a brand. But when I would work with students, they could look at it and go, oh, Joe went from here to here to here, and he was able to do that through learning, going to school for this and that. He was able to learn by keeping his skills up. So LinkedIn's really a great way for other people to check out kind of your journey and your brand. And I kind of mentioned that you can have recommendations on there. So if you can request recommendations from others. It's also just a place for others to learn and interact with you. And so I kind of touched on that too. And again, I keep seeing some links to other LinkedIns here. Feel free to add each other on there. I think it's a really great idea to sharpen your skills that way. Now, when you think about a resume and you think about summarizing yourself on a profile, this is an article that's in the links that I'm sharing with you. It's interesting when you look at this little headline that our editor came up with. Leonardo da Vinci is a detail-oriented self-starter with drawing experience. It kind of hits home when you think about Leonardo da Vinci. You don't think about it being worded that way. So this is a part of a process on LinkedIn where you can speak authentically about who you are and really showcase some of your work. Let your actions speak louder than your words in some cases. So really cool that you can showcase media on LinkedIn as well. And you don't have to put yourself in this small little box here. You can check that article out. So it all starts with a photo. And you can see here some of the stats. You're 21 more times more likely, or what is it? Members with profile photos receive 21 times more views, and you're 9 times more likely to get a connection request. It really just helps people know that you're an actual person, and then gives them an idea for who you are. One of my tips here is that I've always been kind of a video nerd, so I love editing videos, and I'm always learning about that. I was always interested in that since a kid. I've found that the cameras that we have on our phones, oh, you can't see it, but cameras that we have on our phones these days can be just as good as some of the professional photographers out there. By all means, support your local professional photographer, but if you don't have the money or time to go get that done, You may just be better off just borrowing a camera from a friend that has one of those really nice camera phones. They can do the portrait mode to blur out your background for you, and you can get a really nice professional image from some of these premium smartphones. So by all means, if you don't have that premium smartphone, you didn't want to spend $1,200 on a smartphone, you can borrow it from somebody else and get that really nice blurred background. Always go for face up. You want to really have predominantly your face in the photo. And then wear what you would like to wear at your job. That's always a good tip for you. You don't have to overdress or underdress. Wear what you'd be comfortable wearing in the job that you want or have. And Christy, how are we doing in the chat pod?
We do have a question. Dan's asking if there's anything you can touch on in terms of privacy settings for the profile pic from the TA side. We cannot view certain profile photos unless we are connected.
Oh, TA side. What does TA stand for?
Dan, can you clarify what you,
No.
what?
Oh,
teaching assistant. Talent acquisition.
Okay. We cannot view certain profiles. And that may be for, if you're using the talent product, I'm not sure if they have that limited on the talent side. At the end of the presentation, I do have a little bit on privacy if you're curious about that, and we can touch base on additional questions that I'm not able to get to here, but good question. So to edit your profile, the LinkedIn profile's super easy to edit. You'll find that in the top area here where it says me, I'm trying to highlight that for you here. You just click on the me area there, and then you'll be able to begin editing. So click me, and you'll be able to add your location, location, your work experience, intern experience if you're just getting started off, volunteer experience, education, skills, and the program or organizations that you're working with. Highly recommend that if you are doing volunteer experience that you take advantage of highlighting that work. It can also be a great way to promote the work that those organizations are doing. And you may find people that share a commonality in helping in those volunteer areas. So anything you can do to really express who you are and then build connections with other people. You never know what might spark a conversation. For work experience, I didn't go back all the way to when I used to wait tables. Actually, I'm considering changing that because I want students and those people who are just starting off to be able to connect and say, oh, well, Joe started off here and he was able to get work his way up. So I'm considering changing that, but there's no hard and fast rules there. You're able to share what you're comfortable sharing on LinkedIn, and you don't have to go back to, with somebody like me, I probably had like 15 jobs in the past, a lot of summer jobs and gigs like that. So I don't list all those things. I kind of just list, hey, this is the professional things that make sense to show on my LinkedIn profile. Totally up to you there. In editing your profile, you have a headline, and this is an opportunity for you to show what you are and not just what you do when people are reading about you. And these are, you may have seen these, I'll highlight this. Here's an example. So this person put their headline, and again, you can take a peek at these later on the deck. Design thinking meets social impact meets business strategy. So this is a quick way to know what this person does. Some people keep these very simple, and in this example, curriculum designer and facilitator. So you can have this catchy, you can have this kind of tell what you do. It's almost like an abbreviated elevator pitch. I think mine right now just says that I help academic institutions with learning, something to that effect. So that headline just gives people an idea of what you do professionally. And I want to say that's an art form because I'm always thinking about how I can fine tune that to really tell people what I'm passionate about, and then just raise interest in showing what I care about. Any questions in the chat pod there, Christy?
Not at this time.
All right. And Dan, I'm sorry I couldn't answer that question right off the bat, but I will circle back to that. So when you look at your profile, there is a summary too. So you have a headline, just kind of a quick blurb about what you do and with your profession. A summary is going to be where you have 1 to 2 sentences about who you are, and then 3 to 5 sentences about your experience and your top skills and key passions, and then follow that up with 1 to 2 sentences about your future goals and how other members can engage with you. This is just a guideline, but I can tell you it's super useful to look at this. So by all means, take a peek at this and have it kind of like a checklist. I would put this on my checklist of things to have. You could follow this verbatim and it could be really helpful, but there's no right or wrong way to have your summary. This is just your brand and who you are. I've seen people do a story about how they were inspired younger when they were kids, like, oh, I grew up with a digital camera in my pocket and it inspired me to do this, that, and the other. Really showing people how you got on your journey, why you care about what you care about, and just telling them who you are professionally. This is another art form to me. I like to look at other people's summaries. I really like to look at people who work at LinkedIn to try to see how they express themselves. And that's kind of how my strategies. I might spend 20 minutes a week just kind of looking at other people's summaries, looking at their experience. These are free informational interviews in a digital format. And then if I'm inspired to reach out to them, I will reach out to them. So let's talk about building your professional network. We're going to also do this in 4 steps. So I've got some good visuals here. So 50% of hires result from a personal connection. And I think this speaks volumes to why we go, one of the great reasons about being a part of alumni, and it speaks to one of the great reasons to get to know other people, because you never know who might be able to point you in the right direction. Go, hey, Joe, you're really talented in this area. You might want to talk to this person. And it also speaks to when you think about expanding your network and helping others out. I mentioned being a mentor. I'll show you in a little bit. There's some programs at LinkedIn that we're passionate about helping connect people who don't have the opportunity to have those connections. So yeah, building your network is really important. Now, the power of networking. So your first degree connections, usually these are the people who are going to recommend you to somebody else for a job. Everyone has a network. You might not even realize it. Every time you meet an acquaintance, you volunteer in a community or through any other social activity, networking is going to be a key factor in career advancement. And I think I mentioned 50% of workers currently employed found their job through that personal connection. So again, feel free to throw those links in. This is a great opportunity to get to know each other. And you never know when someone might say, hey, I know a perfect opportunity for you. But going beyond that first degree connection, we have our second degree connections here. So your second degree connections are important. Your network is, it's going to consist of strong connections. These are the people that you know well and you interact with often. You're going to have some weak connections, some acquaintances, some people that you might not know personally, but you have kind of a shared background and interest in, mutual connections. These are people that are great to have on LinkedIn if you know that you have that common interest. Well, they may post something and you go, oh, that's a great article, I should read that. Or they may post something that just inspires you. And maybe they become closer in your network. So on LinkedIn, your first degree connections are people that you're already connected to. Second degree connections are people that you share connections with, while third degree connections are connected to your second degree. So there's even another degree here. And LinkedIn will tell you these things. As I tend to browse through LinkedIn to learn about others' professions, where they came from, you can click on it and LinkedIn will tell you how you're connected. And I want to use this opportunity to talk about the network gap. So at LinkedIn, we're committed to closing the network gap. The network gap, it's the advantage that some individuals have over others as a result of who they know. And I think we've all experienced that, where you feel like you can't get into the club. With professional network online like LinkedIn, and the whole point of us is to connect other people. So consider not only how you have felt being locked out of a network, but consider building your network and letting in someone who you might mentor, and think of the advantages that you can afford somebody else. Something that I think is important is, we call it the +1 pledge, but it's broken down in 3 different areas where you just give your time to somebody else. It doesn't have to be a ton of time. Roosevelt has a great program that I'm linking to as well, where you give your time. But when you give your time to somebody else, think of how you sharpen your skills. Uh, we've all heard of the elevator pitch. But if a student or somebody that you mentor comes to you and you have this career conversation with them, you're sharing your experiences with them, you're sharpening that elevator pitch. So now when you have to interview, it kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit faster, it's sharper. You get to sleep on some of the things that you've thought about, and then realize, hey, these are the key things that I want to share about who I am. It really helps you build your brand, um, recognize your talents. So think about giving your time, give your talent, and then giving your network. So not only when you give your network to somebody else, you learn how to ask and build and get into another network too. So it's a really cool idea to build and to give to others as you learn to kind of do the same thing. You're learning to break in as well. So Roosevelt has a really cool professional mentoring program that is in the link to the resources that I'm going to give you. Consider giving your time. And I did see a question in the chat bot. What is your take on accepting connections you do not know and have never met? If they request you outside of places, if they request kind of outside of your network. My philosophy on that is I like to accept connections from people that I do know. And not accepting it doesn't mean that you don't want to interact with that person, but if they don't tell me why they wanted to connect, then I don't know why they want to connect. So, I definitely give priority to connecting with people and messaging with people who tell me why they want to connect. So just consider, if it seems like a low effort, then you're not obligated to connect with them. Maybe you want to keep your network tight so that this is a professional platform. You're trying to advance yourself and help others who are interested in doing that. Perhaps I might add that if they don't add a message, you could ask like, hey, we haven't met before. You could solicit from them if you feel like they just haven't learned how to ask some of those questions. I think that's kind of based off of your own discretion there, but feel free to use your own discretion. Good question. So here's an example of reaching out to somebody else. And in this example, let's say that our character here wanted to meet this guy here. So, hi, Dan, I found your profile through a mutual connection. I'm currently exploring career paths in technology industry and I admire your experience. I'd love to join your network. These things always get me. I always accept these kinds of conversations. Sometimes I'm, working at LinkedIn, I get a lot of requests, to be honest, but so it takes me some time to catch up with. I would also add that if you're reaching out to somebody else, do not take offense if they don't reply immediately. They may be super busy, so don't be offended at all. When I was working to get a job at LinkedIn, I had a friend who already worked here, but there was a few people I reached out to who just didn't have the time to reach back out to me. And no worries if you think about it, a lot of times you want an informational interview and you're able to take a peek at their profile. So you're already getting some good information there, but keep at it. So to start off with, when you're on LinkedIn, you really want to take the low-hanging fruit. And these are people that you're already connected with. This is going to help you build out your network. So LinkedIn does a great job of telling you, hey, you might be connected to this person, or you might be connected to another person. So try to find people that you're already connected with, and just get that nice foundation there as you begin to build out. That way you'll begin to get the benefit of those second degree and third degree connections. You can search for new connections. I like to research people who work at a certain company. If I was looking outside, when I was looking at LinkedIn as a potential employer, I looked up people who worked there. Was curious what things they posted, so I would look up with the search box up top here, names, and then you could change like filters, location, companies, and then there's just some additional filters. These are really handy. My recommendation with these filters is to play with those filters because you don't have to have a master plan when you do that. You can totally just browse and get to know what some of these filters are, and then maybe a month from now you go, oh yeah, I played with that, I'm going to check that out. So play with those filters as you begin to build your network. When you search for new connections, after you click connect, you can send your invite immediately. And I think I mentioned this already. It's always beneficial to add that note in there. I do have a habit. If I work with somebody, I probably won't say anything like, hey, I work with you. I'll just send a connection. They usually know why I want to connect with them. I want to see their posts. I want to see what they're up to. I would love to be connected with them. And they kind of get that. So use your discretion. But if it's someone brand new, always send them a little note. Now, expanding your network strategically based off people that you don't know, look for commonalities. Now, you don't have to have a commonality with somebody, but be mindful that there's probably some things that you have an interest in that you share together. You may be able to find somebody that has goals or volunteer for something that you think is interesting. So make sure when you read through it that you're like, oh, you can connect to these things and then mention them. I really like that these two tips are these little tips down here. So what should you say to them? Like, okay, you have these commonalities here, but just let them know, hey, this is who you are. Tell them about how that search went, why you came across their profile, and then tell them how they can help you. That last one, tell them how they can help you, is going to give them an actionable item. That way they don't have to guess. So try to remove some of the guesswork for them, and they'll be a little bit more likely to reply, kind of reducing that cognitive load of who is this person and what am I supposed to do. This is always nice. This would be kind of a nice one pager for you if you do print out this deck. Highlight this part. So next up, let's talk about using your network on LinkedIn to connect to opportunity. We'll look at messaging connections, which we've kind of talked about already, informational interviews, requesting referrals, recommendations, and then adding value and engaging. So LinkedIn members are 4 times more likely to get hired at companies where they have a connection. And it makes sense. Once you have a connection there, you begin to understand their culture. You can speak to those things during an interview. LinkedIn was an important part of when I got my foot in the door in training and development. I remember the job was posted and I was interested in it. And I immediately found everybody that worked in that department, and I looked up their LinkedIn, and I just studied. And I was trying to imagine myself. I had a hard time imagining myself in that role, even though I thought it would be really cool. But when I was able to look up their profiles and go, okay, this guy does that, she does this, and able to connect a few dots. And I just messaged a few people. One person replied to me and had an informational interview with me that day, actually. I was shocked that they replied. And I remember when they replied back, they said, hey, I'm going to be in Schaumburg. And they said, do you want to just stop by? And I said, yes. And I remember that was like a 2-hour drive for me, but I wasn't going to pass the opportunity up to chat with that person. And to add a little bit more to that story, we ended up talking about basketball, Larry Bird. I remember we connected on basketball, wasn't expecting any of this stuff to happen. And I think he said something to the hiring manager. And then of course the rest of the research was on me. But I think I got that foot in the door at my last job because of LinkedIn, and a super nice person who was able to give me an informational interview.
Wow, that's a great, powerful story, Joe. I've heard so many stories like that where LinkedIn has played such a great role in their lives, and I've experienced that personally too. A question came in from Pearl. Is it true that you can send out 30,000 invitations to connect with people, and maybe the free connection request is what Pearl's
You
asking?
know, I don't know if there's a limit to the amount that you can send. 30,000 is that's a huge number. Um, so I've never heard, you can't do it in bulk. I know that. And I don't know of any limit to sending invites. So just send invites to people that you know. I don't think that you'll ever reach a limit. Definitely going back to that advice where tell them why you're reaching out, learn about them, and then tell them how you can help you. But you shouldn't run into any limitations. All right, keep those questions coming. Thanks, Pearl. And when we talk about informational interviews, I'm not sure and it's with you when I had that informational interview, uh, the one that I'm referencing in the story. I didn't think of it as an informational interview. It was more of me just all I knew is that I didn't know enough and that I wanted to know more. An informational interview is the opportunity for you to learn more. And when you look at this example here, this is a really great example. So I'll read this to you. In this example, it says, "Hey, Aaron, I'm currently exploring careers in communication. I admire your experience, your accomplishments in the industry. I'd appreciate the opportunity to hear about your career journey. Would you be available for 20 minutes over the phone or in person? Look forward to hearing from you." So, really just keeping it tight, concise. Again, you're giving them that action item and telling them why you want to learn more. And just a good example there, you're looking to gain advice for your career. Maybe you want to learn more about the industry. For me, it was learning and development. I had never officially done a training position. I had done my own little workshops, but I had never run anything official. So asking that question, like, can I learn a little bit more about how you got there and what it's like? How do you like it? What's the culture like? Would I be a good fit? You can start to ask some of those questions. So that's a good recommendation on how you can get your foot in the door with somebody else to learn more about what they do. When you request a referral, so here's an interesting fact. So more than 60% of workforce has referred somebody at their company, and many companies actually give rewards if you refer somebody because it's hard to find good talent. When somebody knows somebody is solid, they can recruit them in, they reward that. So referrals are powerful. On LinkedIn, you can request a referral. And what that'll do is it'll put on your profile. And actually, so there's a couple ways to do that. A referral might be where you ask somebody to just kind of tell somebody at work. There's also something on your profile. So if you look at my profile, I have got a couple recommendations. This is where I would reach out to a manager and say, "Hey, would you mind just give me a recommendation on LinkedIn so that others can see the quality of work that I did?" Um, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But this is just some advice. Won't read this one to you, but asking for a referral can be really powerful. And some just quick tips here. Make sure that you include in your message why you're interested in a specific role, and then your appreciation for your consideration. Getting a referral or giving a referral can be a lot of work. I know I've given quite a few, so definitely giving them that little bit of appreciation can go a long way. So I mentioned in the last slide that you can request a recommendation. Now, a recommendation is going to live on your profile. I think I've got about 10, and I've given about 10 recommendations before. And this is where you can look up the person who you know on LinkedIn, and you can click on their profile, and then they'll have a little recommend button. You select your relationship, the position at the time, so to tell that story about why you're recommending. The system's awesome here where it's doing all the work for you, where it's saying connecting the dots for those who are coming in to read this recommendation and understand why you're giving this recommendation. But you can ask current or former managers, current or former colleagues, people who have mentioned or advised you professionally, including through nonprofit training. So feel free to leverage those nonprofit partners that you have. They know the quality of work that you do. And the beauty of this is that once you have that recommendation on your profile, it lives there forever. So that when a recruiter perhaps looks at your profile, they can read that recommendation and say you don't get that job. Well, you don't have to ask for another recommendation because it's always living on your profile. And when we talk about adding value and engaging with your network, here's just 4 tips. So you can invest time in your connections and you can request those informational interviews. Highly recommend you giving those informational interviews to other people as well. You can like and share things that you're passionate about and that relate to your profession. Keeping things professional there, of course. You can join groups. Groups are a great way. I think we have a little group for alumni from my program in my year. These are just great places to chat, to exchange information. You can create your own groups really easy on LinkedIn. So if you want to really focus in and have almost like accountability partners, you can do that. Or perhaps you just know that other people who are interested in the same thing might share some things with you. You can join groups. And lastly, you can give testimonials and recommendations to others. You got to give to get, really. And here, so last but not least, and I think I'm doing okay on time. Again, feel free to engage in the chat pod there. So let's talk about searching and applying for jobs on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's going to do a lot of work for you to help bring you things that you're interested in. There's just a few things that you want to customize or can customize to help you have that information come to you. So 31 million plus job seekers visit LinkedIn, LinkedIn jobs every single week. Now, when I say LinkedIn jobs on LinkedIn, there's a tab that says jobs. So you can click on the tab for jobs, and this is where you can begin to look for jobs in areas areas like locations and in positions that you're interested in. So one thing you can do on LinkedIn is set your career interests. This is where you can include potential job titles that you're interested in, locations like I mentioned, and your career interests, and then you can just start to receive relevant job suggestions. So when I was actually put in a position where, when was this? About a year and some change ago, the training department was downsizing at Verizon. And so what I did was, as soon as I heard that, I went on LinkedIn and then I put in my career interests, and then I turned on this little button here. This is let recruiters know you're open. So I clicked on that. And of course, the job market was a bit better a year and some change ago. And I did get some recruiters that reached out to me naturally. And although I didn't end up getting hired or even interviewed at some of those places, it was a good confidence booster to know that I was moving in the right direction. Of course, I ended up doing more research on LinkedIn and some other places on myself and began to set up those interviews for myself. But it was great to have those come to me automatically. I was actually really surprised that by turning that button on, that I had about 2 or 3 recruiters reach out to me. And so when you search for jobs in this little area here, I'm going to highlight this. You can type in the name of the profession that you're interested in. For me, it was training and development. And then you can search the area that you're interested in. I did a nationwide search myself, but you can hone in on any or zoom in on any area that you'd like, and it'll begin to give you results. It'll show you how many results you get. You can modify the relevance or time, how long it's been posted, things of that nature. You can get really creative here, and this I feel like is a skill. The first time you hop in, you're gonna probably go with just the title and the area, but you'll begin to look at things like date posted, company, experience level, things that you can modify and change. It actually is kind of fun because you have so much power and control over what you want to see. And it can be really enlightening to see what's out there. You can create job search alerts. This is really cool. Once you create that search, you can receive daily alerts that are notified by email or notification in app. I really liked this because I could start to see when something would pop up in a new area. Let's say I was scoping out a new location. So Denver looked really cool, and their economy was booming at that time. And I think a lot of stuff is on the rebound now. So I would get alerts, jobs in Denver, or a broader search would pop up for me. And this is really cool because I didn't have to do any additional work to see those searches. They would just come to me. So it really started to reduce that cognitive load of having to search for a job. And I could really just focus on my informational interviews and getting to expand my network. And I do see a question in the chat. So Yamoni, I am a travel advisor. I have to update my LinkedIn. I'm so behind. It happens for sure. I've definitely been in a position where I'm like, oh, I gotta update. Uh, I mentioned before, if you set aside 20 to 30 minutes every week, maybe a little bit more, depending, that big task of having to update your profile will really be reduced. So try not to get overwhelmed and look at it as this big elephant that you have to eat, but kind of compartmentalize it too.
We have a couple more questions, Joe. How do I narrow results to just positions where I match 8 to 10 of the skills they're looking for?
You know, I'm not sure that you can reduce it down to just skills. You can, I'll go back up one here. So these are some of the filters that you have here under the jobs. Let me highlight these. So you can, the filters that you can use, date posted, company, experience level, location, and there might be a couple more filters there. I'd have to peek at that. So if we have time at the end, I can go in and peek to see if we can zero in on skills. It's important to mention, and I'm gonna actually look through my slides here to see if I have it. I don't. So it's important to mention that on LinkedIn, you can put the skills that you have so that, actually, maybe I'll pull up my actual, I'll go ahead and pull up my profile for everybody. You can post your skills on LinkedIn. And this is I'm glad you mentioned this, Gloria, because everybody can, LinkedIn, everybody can post the skills that they have. And I think it's going to help to have a visual view profile here. All right. So I'm going to blow this up so everybody can see it. Now, this is what you'll see on your profile if you scroll through. So I'm going to go right down to skills and endorsements. So here are some of the skills that I have. I have telecommunications, training, sales, and I have even more. So I have quite a few skills here, and people can go through and click these to endorse you for these. Now, let's say that you apply for a job and that job has skills listed. You'll be a better match for that job if you have these skills listed. Now, let's say that you look up a job and you don't have that skill. So there's a couple ways to go ahead and get those skills. Now, you can use, of course, you can go to school for those things, which is why, actually, one of the main reasons why I went for training and development, because there were some skills that I knew I didn't have. And so you can see that I listed some of those skills up here. And I want to say there's another section here too, where I can list some of the, here we go, certifications and licenses. So on LinkedIn Learning, which is a separate, you do have to pay for LinkedIn Learning. When you have LinkedIn Learning, if you take a course, it'll automatically post those skills once you're finished with a course to your profile. Now you can manually add these by clicking on the pencil here. Once you click those here, you can add new, and you can even bring to the top the ones that you want to highlight. Once you add some of those skills in, it will highlight you and show a better match or a stronger match to potential employers. So I'm glad that you mentioned skills. I think to answer that question, by changing and adding the right skills and endorsements here, you'll be a better match for recruiters. So thanks for that question, Gloria. And Christy, how are we doing in the chat pod?
A couple more questions came in. How do you recommend having your information out there for opportunities that come up while being discreet with your employer? Because in this example, she's always looking, just it's good to be aware of what opportunities are out there, and she's happy in her current situation, but she doesn't want her her employer to see that
and get, you don't want to alarm your employer. Totally
right.
get that. One of the beautiful things about LinkedIn is it's not isolated to looking for a job. It's a professional network. So I use, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, there's influencers that I follow. I like to learn from professionals in a given industry that are doing great things. And there's no shame in continually learning from those in your profession or professions that you admire. Sometimes there's professions that perhaps things that I don't do and won't do, but I like to learn from them and be influenced by professionals. So, it's okay to have a conversation about that and say, I use LinkedIn for this, or maybe bring it up in a conversation. Oh, there's some really great content from this influencer. I read a great article on LinkedIn. If you do open yourself up to recruiters contacting you, that's not published to your entire social network. It's just something that recruiters can see. So that's not shared with everybody. Constantly building yourself up is really important. Constantly learning from other professions. Even at my last job, we had a culture of, hey, it's good to learn from other trainers. Check out the profiles from other trainers. So you can begin to build that culture yourself, being confident that look, you're always building yourself up. You're open to building other people up. It doesn't have to be about sneaking around and getting a different job. But I totally understand how that could be like a challenge too. So I would say, back to the original advice, continue developing yourself and be open about that. I think that's powerful. What other questions do you got?
I think that was the last question. Dan had just shared, I asked a question if anyone else is a hiring manager and regularly reads the recommendations, and his perspective I believe as a hiring manager, I think in talent acquisition, Dan, but sorry if I'm wrong there, so that they do look at recommendations sometimes, but the thought is that sometimes people will only approve and let the best ones that they receive out there, but it's a good sign if you have 5 or more.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got my recommendations, I think it was also, this was maybe 7 years ago. I felt like it was hard. I really had to ask for people to do it. Now the system's like super intuitive, super easy, but sometimes you got to give to get. You'll notice I have 10 on mine, but I've given 9. And so that back and forth, and actually I owe one of my previous colleagues, I owe him a recommendation as well. Something you get better on. There's some great articles about writing a good recommendation as well. So don't be afraid to get some coaching on writing those recommendations. It can be kind of daunting, especially if you're doing it at the end of the day and you're like mentally tired, but definitely got to give to get. And Dan, thanks for that feedback. Gloria, you're totally welcome. Thanks for the question. And what else we got, Christy?
I think that was the last question. So feel free to move on, and any other last questions that kind of pop up, we can address those in the last several minutes.
Okay. So moving on about how we can look for jobs on here, carve out a bit of time, maybe, if you're 20 minutes to work on your LinkedIn profile to learn about others and using the menus and things like that, just to kind of get used to it, that reoccurring, you'll find every single time you'll know it. The system's very, very intuitive, but the more that you use it, the more you may wake up and go, oh, I want to use this filter. You sleep on it a little bit. So have fun with it too. Dream big. It's always fun to, I really was interested in doing this. And when you click on one of these jobs, it'll show you the skills that you need. And guess what? If you don't have those skills, no big deal. Start to learn those things. LinkedIn Learning has a ton of really great stuff on there. I started using LinkedIn Learning back when it was lynda.com. So although I got my formal education, which I would never trade for anything, when it comes to those little skills and little gaps that you might have, LinkedIn Learning is really powerful for, when you look at this job, you go, I really like this job, but it has this skill and this skill. You can go in, take those courses at your own pace. They always have little one pagers that you can print off and resource guides, and then they always have projects that you can follow along with, so it's attainable. Do it maybe as a weekend warrior project or something like that, but dream big, have fun with your job search, and explore more about what these jobs do, and maybe you can bring it to your own job too. So have fun with it. I like to learn more about companies. When I had recruiters reach out to me, I had a couple that reached out to me that I wasn't familiar with. And I think a big part of any company is its culture. You want to know who you're working with. Is it a culture that prioritizes self-care and community? These are things that you can find out by typing in the name of the company here and then clicking on follow. Now, these companies will post things that you can read through, company culture, you name it, whatever they decide to highlight, but it can be very telling. And you can always borrow from these things. I think it's fun to follow companies and learn more about what they do. Maybe you want to borrow some of their ideas, you can always do that. There's also, for example, Roosevelt has a LinkedIn too, and we post on there as well. So it helps keep you connected to your school as well. And you can apply actively. So a lot of companies have this easy apply button where so you put in the work, every week you're putting in a little bit of work on your LinkedIn and you're like, oh, you know what? I think it's where I like it. That easy apply button is super cool. You can just tap on the easy apply, and then it's going to apply for that job on LinkedIn for you real easy. So applicants who apply to jobs within the first 3 days of posting are 13% more likely to get the job. Now, 13% is actually a pretty big number when you think about the race to, if Michael Phelps won by a 13% margin in the Olympics, you'd be like, whoa, holy cow. So put the odds in your favor. And the way to do this is that LinkedIn is going to alert you once you set up those alerts. It'll alert you about a posting. You say, I like that job. And now you can quickly hit that easy apply button. And now you've applied within the first 3 days, gotten in a bit early. Early bird gets the worm. And now you set yourself up for that 13% advantage. And so we're at the point of extra credit and kind of check in on time here. I'm okay to stay a little bit longer, but I know some people may have to bounce. This is being recorded, and don't worry, all these resources will be sent to you. I do see some questions in the chat pod. So Tom, do you want me to read it, Christy?
Sure. Do you have any thoughts on content that people include in their profiles that you consider distracting or perhaps a waste of space?
Everybody gets to have their own opinion. I keep mine professional. I try to think of actually I'll go up to the mission and vision for LinkedIn. And this is like a great North Star. Sorry, I'm like clicking through all these. I didn't realize there's that many slides. When you go back to our mission, and you can kind of think of this, it's to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. So if you think like, are you helping other people be more productive and successful? I think that those are important. It's a dynamic question because I think we're all finding that we need to be a healthy person, you have to be authentic. And so it depends on what you think makes people more productive and more successful. I would keep it related to work, but we're really dynamic people, and maybe sometimes you need to speak out about something that might feel a little bit more personal. If something's weighing on somebody and you think posting about it on LinkedIn might help them professionally, well, that's okay. You can do that, because to be a professional person, you're a person first. So, it's really up to your discretion on that. It's a little bit of an artwork there. So thanks for that question, Thomas. Sorry if it didn't seem like specific enough, but yeah, just think about productive and successful. I think that's really important. And now I'm going to get to that last let's see, I'm probably gonna click out of here and then scroll down. That'll make it, there we go, that's a lot faster. And feel free to keep those questions coming in. There we go. So for extra credit, I'm gonna show you some cool stuff that you can do here. We can explore schools, explore alumni, you can join groups, and then I have a slide here on privacy settings. So exploring schools, it's a bit like exploring companies. So you can always explore and learn a little bit more. I like to stay connected to Roosevelt, see what we're posting. I got updates about this webinar and some of the webinars that are coming up. So you can find more information there by clicking on the follow button. And you can explore alumni. So under the school, you can actually see some information about the school. So you can see where people are moving, what they're doing, what some of the trends are there. And it's kind of cool just to get a little bit of information about some of the alumni and see what they're doing. Joining groups. Now, this is a really great way to engage. Being able to see what others are up to and kind of having this like digital informational interview that's one-sided, just you learning is one thing, but to be able to engage on current events, things that are working, it's great to have a discussion. So there are groups on LinkedIn, and when you type in the text box up here, you have the ability to just focus in on groups here. So there's a little group filter that you can use under the drop down, and then you'll see some of the groups that are out there that are posting and sharing professional ideas in areas that you're interested in. So privacy settings, the ball is in your court. And as far as like not just privacy, but when it comes to things that pop up, maybe you don't want to have your phone have an alert every time something goes off. You can customize these things. Highly recommend that you pop into these settings, just read through them. And there's a lot in these menus, so take a look at them, maybe take a look at them again. It helps to take a peek at these more than once, but you can change your language on LinkedIn, your password. You can control your notification settings as well. We all know that we want to have healthy amount of notifications. So the ball is really in your court. But with that, I'm going to be open for questions and really just thank you. Remember, I'll give you the resource kit that I have. Let's see, I have the resource kit here. Remember, you're going to get a link to mentoring. Again, I think helping somebody else out is going to be a way for you to sharpen your skills as well. That's important. The entire deck you have available to you, a tip sheet, and then I've got some additional information for you on building your brand and posting on LinkedIn. So thanks a ton for having me, and great to be a part of Alumni with you.
Joe, thank you so much for spending time with us. Just jam-packed hour with so much great information, and we appreciate it because it's also important. Obviously, with the amount of folks that showed up here today, there's a lot to learn and a lot to soak in and apply, and we appreciate you sharing the deck with us. So I've had a couple of additional questions come in. We'll be able to share that share that PDF deck with you in a post-event email follow-up. Also will include a survey link where you can share just your feedback in addition to topics that you want to see for future webinars, or if there's if you're an expert in a certain area and you'd like to present like Joe, feel free to reach out to me too. But Joe, thank you again. Such rich information with LinkedIn, and we really appreciate your expertise and insights here this afternoon and your time.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks everybody for your time. Take care, and let's take care of each other. Bye now.
Yes, great message. Bye everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.